It's a real pleasure to have Michel here again. He's a main board member of ArcelorMittal and extraordinarily experienced in the company and the steel industry in general. And we also have Patel from Investor Relations, who can field questions from you as well and feed them to me to feed on to Michel. So welcome to everybody. We are in the UK at the moment. Michel, I think, is in Luxembourg, and it's a great day in England, but I do hope that we can brighten up the mood here. Michel, thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to see you again. Welcome.
Hello, John, and hello to all our listeners and viewers. It's also a pleasure to be in contact with small shareholders because, in fact, you have to know we care a lot about our shareholders. The whole top management is very often in all big cities in the world, meeting analysts, meeting institutional investors, and but at these events, normally small shareholders are not really, individual shareholders are not present. They are represented by these fund managers. And so I think it's extremely important that we have also a direct dialogue with what our ultimate shareholder is thinking. And from that, it's really a pleasure for me to join you since long years and to be in dialogue with them.
Thank you very much. What you say is absolutely rightfully the retail shareholders. One of the things I noticed in the recent report is the terrible mining tragedy in Kazakhstan. Do you want to say a word or two about that? Because I know that the company has spent quite a lot of time looking at this and wondering what to do about it.
First of all, I thank you that you started your question with Kazakhstan, because it was the worst day for ArcelorMittal, I would say, since the beginning. It was absolutely tragedy, and the whole group, everyone in the group, I would say, from the shop floor to mining guy to management, was shocked about what was happening, and hence first priority was obviously to help the people who were involved, their families, to do everything we could do to help them, but we can only help them materially. We try to do what needs to be done. Unfortunately, we cannot give back lives of those who disappeared, and that makes us so really sad. And in order to illustrate this already, for example, simply, so 2 days after that, Aditya had a phone call with 30,000 people from ArcelorMittal Group discussing the event. We had an extraordinary board meeting. We are kept updated by his management very regularly in order to make sure where we are. But now, coming a little bit back to the incident in itself. In fact, it happened at the period since Aditya is there. There was a renewed focus on safety, and there was, in particular, a lot to make people more responsible to take care of their safety. Some good results, for example, in our steel mills, which represent the biggest, by far the biggest part of our group. This year we had no fatality for our own personnel, and that was an achievement we had not seen since a long term. We have many world-class places in terms of safety, because we compare also all the different sites with so the World Steel Association, and in general in our steel shop we are significantly below the global industry. And then this incident happened. What did happen? I think first of all, I think it's true that in Kazakhstan things are more difficult than in other places. Things were also more difficult because of the Ukrainian war, and also because of COVID. So a lot of exchanges with other parts in the group was much more difficult. And Kazakhstan is the only country where we have these kind of underground mines which are particularly dangerous. As we know also, they exist also in China in some extent, they exist to some extent in Russia, and also there's sometimes very bad accidents happens. This is not an excuse. We tried to do everything which was also possible to help Kazakhstan to improve in health and safety. Over the last 20 years, we have invested 5 billion, 150 million per year for an output of 3 million tons, which is on average very big part compared to other plants we had. I would say that we tried to invest a lot in safety equipment in the mines, but nevertheless, it happens. It was probably a succession of 2 explosions inside the mine, despite the fact that we do not have yet the final conclusion of the official governmental body who make a detailed analysis and report of the accident. So it was really a sad event. But also inside the group, and not only in Kazakhstan, we want to take consequences out of this, and for that reason, the board has decided to appoint and to identify an outside consultant to look at all our safety procedures, rules, equipment, everything, all through in order to see where are the failures, where can we improve. And what we said also, I was very happy about that, it was decided that the results of these audits were made public, because there is also a question of credibility and the question of reputation of the company. And for us, and I think also our shareholders, they know we have invested over the last time, or we have insisted so much all the time over health and safety, and then when this happens, it's easy to lose reputation, and it's very tough to gain it back. And that's the reason also why we want to do everything also for our people in order to do so. And I'm quite sure that next time when we discuss together, we can discuss about a progress report. And I think also I'm quite sure that also on our website, there will be some additional information about what we can do and what we have decided to do in order to make that this never will happen again.
Well, you make a very good point, Michel. I mean, the safety record of ArcelorMittal, both in mining and in steelmaking, has been pretty enviable. So this is a real shock. And obviously, a deep mine is rather different from an open cast mine. So inherently more dangerous. Could you say a few words about the state of the steel industry? And also, I mean, the steel industry is famously cyclical. Where are we on the cycle? And how do you put China and the potential Chinese exports into that cycle?
I would say that today we are in a difficult period of the cycle, almost everywhere, mainly for different reasons. And there I think it makes some sense to separate China from the rest of the world. In China, you have seen that significantly the economic growth has slowed down after the latest Party General Congress. In particular, there was problems in the construction market, and hence when the Chinese internal economy is slowing down, the steel industry is suffering, and that despite the fact that, for example, the Chinese automotive industry went quite well, but these are relatively small volumes. China is producing 25 million vehicles. That makes approximately a steel demand of 25 million tons versus a production of 1,000, so it's of 1 billion. So it's totally insignificant. But China was suffering, and that expressed the sense that some of these Chinese mills, and they are number of them, because the Chinese steel industry is not consolidated, then they started to increase exports, and by cutting prices, so that their spreads and also world prices in general were going down. And this was obviously depressing the overall steel industry. Now, if we go to the western part of the world, we have seen that in particular post-COVID and also post-war in Ukraine, we have had extraordinary regaining of inflation. And that made, in particular, for CapEx projects, and inside CapEx projects for the whole construction business, made life very, very difficult. And hence you had the tendency of negative purchase manager forecasts. You had at best stagnation for most of the steel consuming segments, and so it was quite difficult and that means that we had everyone had some difficult situation in terms of volume and of price, despite the fact that, like ArcelorMittal, we were taking care to adapt demand to supply by shutting regularly some furnaces. Now, you have noticed that I used a little bit the past. I was, everyone was, because I think it's fair to say that since the beginning of November, the situation has improved slightly. So it's not something which is spectacular. First of all, you see it also on the stock markets, who have rallied again. So there is some confidence about the overall macro view. Second, we have seen that inventories were very low, which means that at least some intermediary stockholders or service centers, they need to replenish their warehouses. And also we see in certain segments of markets, we see a little bit more positive more positive signs, in particular with purchase manager indices, which slightly improve. And that has led over the last months, in particular to the US, to quite significant price increases. So if you read SBB or the official figures, you can speak about, some people speak about $150 per ton. In Europe, it is also significant, but less. And we see that, I would say, roughly at constant cost, margins are improving, and people realize that they need to prepare themselves for next year. Now we have some lags, you know, that if especially for flat products, if you order today, we have already ordered the iron ore or the coal 3 or 4 months or 6 months before in Australia or in Brazil. So, and this is now then completed. So from taking into account the lags, we can say from a result point of view, Q4, Q1 may be the trough, but definitely if I look a little bit forward beyond that period, I think that things will start to improve.
Interesting. I noticed that you say things are improving in the States, or North America in general. I presume a lot of that is because of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, whereas I think probably the PMIs, the purchasing management indices in Europe, probably not as good. You look at the German economy and it's flirting with recession. Are you seeing a sort of a discrepancy between the two sides of the Atlantic?
I think that the US economy indeed is, from a macroeconomic point of view, more dynamic than some of their European counterparts. But I would not exaggerate at this moment the IRA, because the IRA is only at the beginning, and we are only at the announcement of investments. And these investments do not yet translate into a strong increase in steel demand. but this will happen, and I think that's really also the reason why the spirit in the US might be more positive today than it is in Europe, despite the political uncertainties due to the election year next year. So that is for the US. Then you have in the US and in Europe, nevertheless, you have had one positive effect, that was the automotive industry. You remember last year when we discussed, we were complaining a lot because the automotive industry was missing chips, and in fact, order books which were going on and become bigger and bigger, and also customers and probably also some of our shareholders, they wanted to buy a new car and they couldn't get one. And so what happened this year is that the chip shortage really was reduced, and hence the automotive production was increasing by 20% roughly, for example, in Europe this year, which is helpful, and which was the fact that there was simply a big flow of orders which needed to be translated into an industrial activity. Now, for the rest in Europe, we can say that it's a little bit mixed. You can, if you read the papers, for example, people are more positive now in Italy. The spreads in Italy were going down. France is doing, people say France is doing better than other countries. You have in Germany the political situation, which is difficult due to the recent decision by the Constitutional Court in Karlsruhe, and so that people are uncertain what will happen, and will the German government be in a position to implement also the new investments they want in order to make possible the transformation from a carbon to a non-carbon economy, and which is helping the steel industry, but which is helping also the power industry, and whether they have also the money to support the big chip plants and the battery plants which had elected to invest in Germany.
I'd like to get on to decarbonization in a minute, but I noticed looking at the figures for the third quarter, I mean, they're not flattering if you compare the third quarter 2023 with the third quarter 2022. And yet, at the same time, you clearly state that there's a structurally improved profitability. I mean, how is this paradox being, how do you explain it?
But I think I have spoken about that since a long time, and we have said ArcelorMittal has made its homework. Yeah. And its homework was to make an active portfolio management in order to try to see, given a certain level of demand which is not growing as much as we would like, we need to concentrate our production on our most competitive plants. And the consequence might be that we need to adapt capacities. Then also inside the company, we had in our yearly budget efforts, we have a lot of savings plans which are definitely giving some results, and we were continuing in innovating and in order to make better steels and to keep the confidence with our customers, some of them being linked to carbon, but we can come back to this point. And on top of that, we have the second part of the strategy, which is to say, do we want to do some specific M&A or some specific projects which structurally help the company to grow and to improve its profitability. In terms of M&A, I might mention only two, which are recent ones. So one is PESEM in Brazil, which is in fact a slab producer in the northern Brazil, just next to Carajás, and which is extremely performing, which has some optionality in order to be expanded or partially transformed into, let's say, low carbon steel. And then we have the HBI production unit in Texas, which we bought from Wurth. Wurth did not really be successful in mentioning and managing it. So we took it over, and that is today that makes the iron, that transforms the iron ore with natural gas, and hence also its carbon exposure is much lower than for the normal traditional blast furnace production line. Then for the strategic internal projects, we see today that our Mexican hot strip mill is running. So we were speaking about it since the last 2 or 3 years, and it is transforming, in fact, a part of our domestic slabs into hot strip mill, which can be exported to the US or internally used in the Mexican market, which is a strong industrial market. We have expansion projects in terms of quality or quality products in Brazil, in long and in flat. We are implementing the expansion of the Liberia mines in order to transform them into high grade, high quality, suitable for decarbonized steel pellets. So that is really interesting. And if you look at all this together, you have on one hand side the 2 M&A files which I was mentioning, 500 million of additional normalized EBITDA, and the new projects which make on aggregate 3 billion. There we believe that the potential of normalized EBITDA is 1.3 billion. And then on top of that, I even did not mention at this moment India, but maybe that we can speak about that later.
Yeah. Talking about M&A, a lot of market rumors about US steel. Is that part of your plan?
So first of all, I think you know my answer in terms of M&A.
I know you want
we never publicly comment on the file. Sure. I can understand the question. I can also understand the question. You did not ask to say, why did you sell AM USA? And people say you are interested in USX. So all this I understand, but I think also both questions are not linked, in the sense that in the case of AM US Steel, the question was definitely that the company was lacking more and more captive iron ore, and hence the only supplier would have been Cliffs at that moment. And the question was, either would we acquire Cliff or would Cliff acquire AM USA, which was finally the decision we made, and which was, I think, very much applauded by our shareholders, because all the proceeds were to them, and the group reduced significantly its OPEB and pension liabilities.
Lovely, thank you.
Now, on the other side, the US market is a very interesting market, and we are continuing to invest in it. I was mentioning the direct reduction unit we acquired from Wurth. We are building a new electric arc furnace in Alabama, in Calvert, making it industrialized in order to be able to produce a part of their slabs. We have built a new hot rolling mill in Mexico, and we are strongly investing in Canada with the first decarb project, closing down the blast furnaces and transforming it into a DRI electric arc furnace. And in fact, even today, last year, we sold more steel to US customers in the US than we sold steel in Brazil to Brazilian customers, whereas we are the top leader in Brazil, and in the US we are slower. So we are smaller. So simply to say that this is for us a very strategic market, and for that reason we need to pay attention how we want to grow, and we have shown that we want to grow, but despite putting our balance sheet at risk, and despite putting also our capital allocation policy at risk.
I mean, obviously, electric arc furnaces, as opposed to blast furnaces, improve your carbon footprint, or I mean, diminish it. And I think I'm right in saying that steel making is what, 7% of annual global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's quite important. I mean, you make a big thing about decarbonization. How is the overall? I mean, you have targets which are 2030, 2035, 2050. How are you meeting the targets?
We think that we are still on our route as we have announced it. We will make the final plan, the final analysis out of it in our carbon report, which should be due by next year. Because every 2 years we make a carbon report where we are in the different policies. So we are working a lot of it. It is definitely part of our strategy, and we have some achievements. I give you some example. I was already mentioning Canada, where the first group project is being done, also with the strong support of the Canadian government, and also due to the fact that power prices in Canada are in particularly attractive because they have a low-cost green power available also for the future. I was also mentioning Alabama, and then we have made also over the last year significant investments in upstream green power capacities, in particular in jurisdictions where we need such power, and where the power projects also gave a return which is in line with the expectations of the group. And hence we invested, took the investment, the decision to invest several $100 million in India, in a project which is directed by utility professionals, so that we don't take the industrial risk, but we take the power, and it will give us up to 30% of our electricity needs, which will be green. The same we did in Brazil. Also, I think with a capacity of 500 megawatt, which we have there, and we extended the same model in Argentina also. And with all that, in order to be greener and to have a better footprint, and to assure also that we have enough power, because when you switch from the blast furnace to the electric arc furnace, and you do not have the power in quality, which is green, in quantity, and in price, you are at risk.
Yeah.
And so you need to make sure that the three conditions are met. And it is also this which is one of our main items of discussion with on the European side. So from an industrial point of view, our projects in Spain, in Belgium, in France, and in Germany are clear, are on paper, are at the FEED stage, which is in fact the global engineering studies are done, have been introduced and discussed with the governments, are pending today in Brussels. And we need now to have final answers. Good news, for example, was last week, where we got the first answer for our partial plan in Spain, where we are building a new electric arc furnace in Gijon, which will be used to produce semis for our rail and plate and wire rod mills there. But we need now to continue also the discussion with the different governments, because the conditions need to be met, in particular what I said about power in terms of quality, quantity, and price. And there, you know, probably that Europe is a little bit lacking, but it is moving now. And the present COP discussions are interesting. For example, what you heard about nuclear energy in the rest of the world and also in France, and then the renewables need to be done, but at the right price in order to be competitive.
Yeah, it's a nice coincidence that we are having this event for the retail shareholders now, coinciding with COP28 in Dubai. At that point, let me ask Hetal if any questions from our listeners, from the shareholders.
Yes, thanks, John. Yeah, we've actually got 4 questions, but I'll try and group them together and stay in the same topic of decarbonisation. I think the first question has come here from a shareholder in Luxembourg. When will ArcelorMittal introduce green steel into the market? What will be the commercial ramp-up plan? And which markets or industries are ready to pay for a green premium today? We can start with that, and I have a follow-up question afterwards.
Okay, I think that's a very interesting question, because indeed, since 2021, we were starting to propose to the market first low carbon steel products, and that was due to the fact when we had, for example, a carbon saving project, we allocated these savings to a certain type of productions. Now, since 22, we extended our offer of X-Carb products, where we can demonstrate that these products are made were produced in a very low carbon environment, very often in the electric arc furnace, with a big amount of scrap. And with green electricity, and through that you are able to reduce your carbon footprint up to 75% versus the traditional way of producing steel. So we are there, and customers are extremely interesting. And so the second part of the question, who is interesting to do so? It's first of all these industries who feel some pressure on carbon, not only on scope 1, but also on scope 2. For example, the automotive industry, or the industry producing solar panels and so on, because there you need also, the frame needs to be out of steel. And then you have a third category of clients who are very keen, and that is people like governments who want for specific infrastructure projects to have green steel, because that is part also of their overall policy. And that is what is going on. So I think that we need indeed, and for that reason, our decarb projects are so important. We need to increase production of this product, because demand is strong, and customers very open, in particular also the automotive industry.
But presumably, Michel, is there a price premium for X-Carb steel? And how big is the premium?
So you know that for many reasons we don't speak about specific market prices in publicly, because you know that this is not allowed. But I've seen that certain actors in the industry have spoken of premiums which could reach up to 200 euros or dollars per ton, because of this interest, and because the customer is making its own abatement cost analysis, and then saying this is really what is worthwhile for going. So, and that means that there is really a demand we have to go for.
Sorry, Hetal, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think, thank you for that, Michel. There's a second question actually on CBAM. So similar topic. To what extent will CBAM implementation affect the supply chain of ArcelorMittal? To what extent are suppliers ready for this? And in which countries are likely to bear the most cost increase in their supply price? Okay,
I think that first of all, I would like to see to tell our speakers that our auditors that CBAM is in fact a carbon border mechanism, and the aim is the policy aim is to establish a level playing field in a specific market which has which imposes a cost on carbon emission, like the European Union. And the fact is precisely and the goal which is seen to be reached by CBAM is to see that if there is importer of dirty steel, they have to pay for the equivalent emission of their carbon in order to be ready to import their steel. Now, that is good for theory, and so from that everyone can follow this. And also the positive side of it is that since October this year, the CBAM is working in Europe, but on a trial basis and without paying, because implementing it means in fact that you need to cap all your production units in a different country to compare it to a certain benchmark, how much CO2 is it emitting, and then going and then making this, and then giving these details to the importer so that the importer can make the report to the global administration. This is slightly a bureaucratic approach, but it is also done in order to avoid that there is not too much risk of cheating, if I can call it like that, because in case the carbon price is 85 euros, it is now, the additional cost for a European producer today is 2 tons per ton of steel. So we are speaking about $170 or euros, and that's a huge incentive to try to go to the European market. Now, it is clear that we have to see still whether this CBAM system is working. We believe that it is that you can improve it, in particular with the objective to avoid the circumvention risk. For example, what could be done? China has one electric arc furnace, and they say all our exports to Europe go through this electric arc furnace, and so it's carbon free. This cannot be the case. Or another thing which is very important for the European steel industry, European steel is very often also exported. And if we introduce a cost of carbon in Europe, that means that our domestic prices and our production costs increase. And so we become less competitive in exporting our steel. And so what the steel industry says is we need to have a kind of tax credit when we export, so that we are also on a level playing field outside, in particular, as European steel is the best and the cleanest steel we have in the world. So these are today the kind of discussions. They are tough because sometimes you have the impression in the European Union that for them the absolute reduction of CO2 is the only target they have, even if that would mean that some production of steel would, for steel or for other carbon-intensive products, would go down or would be expatriated to other jurisdictions. So this is a question we need to discuss, because it's become particularly important in comparison when the US introduced the IRA. Because in fact, the philosophy of IRA is you are doing something for the environment and we are giving you an incentive. And the European ETS system, including with the CBAM, is if you are polluting, we are first of all hurting you, so that we hope that you would adapt, that you become nice, and then it's good, and we are helping you a little bit by making sure that an outsider is not getting an advantage he should not merit for. And so the discussion is important, and I hope really that this will be that the next European Commission, which will be elected after the elections, the European elections next June, I think, should give as a result really a debate in Europe how to react to IRA in order to have really a similar system throughout the world, and not one of incentives in some parts and some of penalties in the other.
Fascinating topic, this CBAM. But if I understand correctly, I think that the trial period is supposed to end and the CBAM to come properly into operation the 1st of January 2026.
Absolutely, that is absolutely foreseen, and this is a positive momentum, that's for sure. But we have to share to be sure that it is the response we need, and I think there are still some questions open.
I mean, there'll be an awful lot of tweaking, do you think, or I mean, how?
But if you can get a free lunch,
yeah,
you take it.
Yes, absolutely. Hital, sorry, you had, I think, another couple of questions.
Yeah, sorry, no, changing tack actually on our auto versus aluminium versus carbon fiber. So we have a question here. What are the new products ArcelorMittal will consider introducing to offset competition from higher usage of carbon fiber and aluminium by the automotive industry?
Yeah, I think that's it's a very important question, because everyone knows that the automotive market is a key market for ArcelorMittal, and hence we need to defend ourselves. But we are used to that, and because every time it's a long time that people were all the time questioning what is why steel will, because that's the beginning. When steel was rusting, we needed to invent the coating of steel. Then we had the high strength steels in order to reduce the weight, and so it was all the time with innovation that we are in a situation as it is today, that 90% of metal used in a car is steel and 10% is non-steel. So a very strong position. And it is also quite clear today that at least in the mass segments, B2C, that this situation will prevail, because we have already today more than under development, but under production, new processes in order to make steel even more attractive and lighter for the cars. I give you an example. Our the laser welded blanks. The idea is to create bigger sheets, so that out of these bigger sheets you can stamp more products, and hence optimize the kind of products and offering to our to the OEMs also very attractive products. Second is obviously the question of energy intensity, and producing aluminium is much more energy intensive than steel. So it is not so obvious to do that. Maybe in the very high luxury segments, it is a question also of fanciness or so, where you have to see, but this represents a very little room. And last but not least, seen from a steel producer, the new EV is giving big new market opportunities. First market opportunity is the box where you have to pack the battery in order to protect it, because the battery is extremely heavy, and you have up to 60, 100 or 150 kilos of steel simply to protect this battery. Needs to be very resistant steel, and that never won't be aluminum. And then you have the other big market, and that is a so-called electrical steel. That is the ones you have to install in motors, in rotors, in all electrical equipment, which is a high level product which we are producing today in the south of France, in Saint-Chély, and where we are today building a new plant in Dunkirk in order to increase our markets there, and to work also with our OEM customers in order to use our high quality steels.
And I think you had a final one.
No, I think that was
That was, yeah, I've got some afterwards, but if you carry on and I'll answer in a couple of minutes.
No, Michel, I think I interrupted you. Or
Why don't I just go on to a separate topic? There's a couple of people who have followed up on this, on capital allocation again, actually. How do you think about M&A relative to buying back your own shares And can you give us an update on the dividend?
I think first of all you have to look at it in a balanced way, and I explain you why that happens. If you do good M&A, and I think we can give as an example India or PESEM or the DRI in Corpus, first DRI plant in Corpus Christi, what is it? That is improving the bottom line. When you buy back shares, you decrease the number of shares, but profitability is all about earnings per share. And if you don't do the right investments, what happens then your earnings might decline. And if that is parallel to the buyback of shares, this is not good. And that's the reason why precisely ArcelorMittal has implemented this capital allocation policy, where it has to see, first of all, we need to have a balance sheet where we can generate free cash flow every year or almost every year. And then second, what can we do with this free cash flow? First of all, we use 50%, I would say at least 50% or a minimum of 50% to give it back to our shareholders in forms of dividends and of share buybacks. And the other one, we are using it to strengthen our group, and this while maintaining our very strong balance sheet, which helps also to keep interest payments low, which is particularly important. We see it now when the long-term interest rates go up by 5% within 1 year. You can see that if you are heavily indebted, it can be devastating for your results.
Yeah, you have a very good debt profile now, and
absolutely
controlled the net debt. We haven't really mentioned India. It strikes me that India has been a huge success story for ArcelorMittal, and yes, I presume it will continue that way if we look at the growth of the Indian economy.
Absolutely, India is fantastic, and I think also it's clearly also partly in the ADN of the group, and you and everyone understands why I'm saying that. So I must say we are extremely happy with the acquisition of what is today ArcelorMittal NSC. So the joint venture with Nippon Steel, where we own 60% and Nippon Steel 40%, but we are running the company really with one common team. And I can say that first of all, and that's one of the reasons of the big success in terms of results, which we publish, by the way, every quarter when we publish our own overall results. And that means that the cooperation between Nippon Steel and ArcelorMittal is also excellent, and I would say also the support of Japan in this joint venture, in particular through financing. For Japan as a country, India is a natural, very strong partner, also to be seen with the rivalry between China and India, and hence is doing a lot to strengthen the economic relationship. And hence a lot of the expansion in India is financed through Japanese banks, or even the Japanese development banks, at fantastic rates, which makes even the capex projects even more attractive. Now, this being said, in the meantime, so integration has been perfect. Taking over the plant from the former owners went very well. We have an excellent management there. In the meantime, also, we bought a lot of infrastructure, which is necessary for a coastal site. So we acquired the port, we acquired transport equipment, we acquired the slurry pipelines to transport the iron ore, so that from that point of view, the Hazira plant is very positive. And then you have the second element, which is the explosion of the Indian market. The Indian market is foreseen up to 2030 or 32 to increase by 100 million tons. And the Indian steel market is strongly consolidated, and hence our need and our will is to consolidate our market share, and hence we have very ambitious growth plans there. First of all, in Hazira, so we are today in a way to double almost capacity with the appropriate investments and with a good mix between blast furnace technology and DRI technology. We have a further vision to expand up to 22 million tons, and we are today in the way also to prepare the acquisition of additional land to build a second site where we can produce steel, and steel which is demanded by the market. Now, today we are only producing flat products and also some plate, and we are clearly positioning AM/NSC to be a prime supplier, because all our high quality products which have been developed in Europe and the ones of Nippon Steel also, they can come in order to be really the premium player in the market. And then the second question we are today also thinking about, we are not producing long steel today, because Hazira is in flat and plate, and we are looking at the opportunity and studying the opportunity whether it would make sense to have long steel, given the fact that India is in a development period, and in a development period, typically infrastructure and construction is extremely important, and you might have generally, or that's the experience we had in Europe, a bigger part of long steel consumption in these countries than flat, and so we see also there a very strong market, maybe where we could take a part.
Michel, we are almost out of time, but let me ask you to look into the crystal ball and look at the future, the next year. What do you see as the opportunities for ArcelorMittal and the risks? How would you balance one against the other?
Okay, I think this is obviously a very difficult question, in particular as we have not yet also finalized our internal budgets, because they will only be discussed later in December by the board. But I think that's not really, you do not expect from me to have clearly to have an opinion or to express an opinion on volumes or on prices. On prices, I've already said that the trough is done, and from the second quarter on, things should go on, because we see that today in the market, which is obviously a positive element. Then second, I think that we will continue to work on the strategic features, which are our main strategic points. That means decarbonization on one hand side, continuation of our projects of strategic growth, and third, our capital return policy, which we discussed earlier last year. What should be the risks? Obviously, I think we are in troubled periods today. That is from a macroeconomic point or from a macro-political point of view. We have still war in Europe, and Europe is our biggest footprint. We have another war in the Middle East, so it's really a difficult situation, and you never know how this will be as a change. We will also have election year in Europe with European Parliament, in the US with presidential elections. So there are a lot of uncertainties in the market, but what I can tell you simply is that we will continue with our very clear-cut strategy, try to improve, strive to strengthen, and what I can simply say also, we have the people to do so. We have excellent management teams. I think you have seen also we have quite strong social relations. That means also that we have strong workers who are very close to the companies, who are ready to fight for them, and I would say that feels us confident. And so from that point of view, I think that we should thank all these contributors to the strength of the company, and then wish to all of us that it will really happen.
I think it's been a wonderful tour d'horizon. And all I have to say now is thank you very much to the shareholders. I want to wish you all a very good Christmas, whatever, and a very good New Year. And Michel and Heta, thank you very, very much indeed, yet again. And Michel in particular, you do so much work on this, and I'm really grateful. Thank you very much. Happy Christmas, and have a very good New Year.
Thank you, John, as well. So also one word from my side, also to our shareholders, all the best. Simply, I would recommend to you, consult our website. There's a lot of information. It is quite excellent, as John has mentioned, or address yourselves. Also write an email to our investor team in any language, in French, in English, obviously in all the languages you want, and we would like to continue to be in close contact with you. So with that, all the best, and was really a pleasure to have you today with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.